today I'll teach you the basics of 3D programming in Blender using the programming language Python. You're not only going to learn how to code, but also how to come up with your own code. And at the end, we will also render out the result. It's going to be quick and easy, so let's get started. And before we begin, make sure to download the latest version of Blender 2.8, which you can find in the description. Okay, so let's start off by clicking X to delete the default cube. And then let's open a new window. And under scripting, you will find the text editor. So select the text editor and then click new to create a new script. And let's start off by writing in import BPY, which is a Blender module for Python. So import BPY. And then let's enable colors and line numbers as well. Now let's try adding an object to the viewport. So click bpy.ops.mesh.primitive, and then let's go to add and mesh, and then select an object. Let's say the monkey. So type in monkey and then specify the location. So location equals 0, 0, 0 on the X, Y, and Z axis, and then run script. And as you can see, we have the monkey at the location 0, 0, 0. In order to make the script a little bit more interesting, let's add variables to the location, so X, Y, and Z. And then let's add randomness as well. So type in from random import randint. And by using randint, we can get random locations for the objects we add, which is very useful when adding multiple objects. And then number equals 600, which is the amount of objects we will add to the scene. And then add a for loop, which repeats a block of code at a specified amount of times, which in this case is 600, since we set the number variable to 600 and we use the number variable in the for loop. And then X equals randint, and then the range between -30 and 30, which means that the object will be added at the x-axis at random locations between -30 and 30. And then the same for the y-axis, so y equals randint between -30 and 30. And then we do the same for the z-axis as well. So z equals randint between -30 and 30. And then we need to move the monkey adding a line of code under the for loop. So let's go down to line 14 and then use backspace until it's behind the z-axis, and then click enter to move it under the set randint line of code. And click X to delete the monkey. And then let's try running the script. So click run script. And after a few seconds of running the code, you can see that we have 600 monkeys added to random locations between -30 and 30 on the X, Y, and Z axis. So let's try some different values. So click A, then X to delete them all. And let's change the X value to -10. Let's do the same for the Y value and the Z value. And let's change the end values as well. So let's set it to 20. And 10 for the y-axis, and let's change the primitive to let's say a cube, and then click run script to run the script once again. And once the script is done running, you can see that we have 600 cubes added to somewhat different locations than the last time. And let's change the number, let's say to 10, and then let's change the locations to a smaller range. So let's say -3 to 3, and then 5 and 5, and then -2 and 2. And we can change the primitive once again. So let's change it to a cone. And then we need to delete them all. So click A and then X to delete all of the objects. And then run script, and as you can see, we now have 10 cones added to the viewport. Okay, so now you know the basics of adding objects in Blender using Python code, and now I'm going to show you how you can use the info window in Blender to come up with your own code. So let's go under scripting and then select info. And before we use the info window, I'm just going to change up the script a bit. So let's add 500 monkeys in the range of, let's say, -10 and 10 on the x-axis, and then -10 and 10 on the y-axis, and then -4 and 4 on the z-axis. Let's change the object to a monkey, and then run the script. And as you can see, we now have 500 monkeys. But let's say you want to add a subdivision surface modifier to all of the objects once they are added to the scene, so that they have more vertices and look better. So let's add a modifier to one of the monkeys. So let's select a monkey, add a modifier, and add a subdivision surface modifier. And by adding additional subdivisions to the subdivision surface modifier, both for the viewport and the render, we get more vertices, which means that the object looks a lot better, especially when it's a monkey. So as you can see to the right, we got the code for adding the subdivision surface modifier in the info window. So now we can use that to improve our script. So let's start off with the top line for adding the subdivision surface modifier. So click bpy.ops.object.modifier _ add type subsurf, and then the next line is the context.object modifiers, and then subdivision, and then render levels equals 3, because we want 3 levels of subdivisions for the render. And then let's add 3 levels of subdivisions to the viewport as well. And I click A, then X to delete the monkeys of the previous script, and then click run script. And this one is probably going to be really heavy for the computer because there's so many vertices, but as you can see, we now have all of the monkeys added with the proper amount of subdivisions. Now, before we continue with the tutorial, let's just create a save. So go to File and then Save As. And then you can save the file wherever you want on the computer, and then give the file a name, and then click Enter to save. Now, if Blender is getting a little bit slow because of the 15 million vertices, you can also change the levels of subdivisions to 1 and then 2 for the render, and then instead add some smooth shading. So right click to select the monkey, and then click Object, and then Shade Smooth. And then you can use that line of code in our script. So bpy.ops.object.shade _ smooth. And then 2 parentheses, and let's click A, and then X. And then let's add those 2 lines of code as well, so that every time we run a script, the previous script will automatically be deleted from the viewport. So bpy.ops.object.select _ all, and then action, select, and then bpy.ops.object.delete, and then use global equals false. So now when we run the script, let's just add in objects so that you can see what happens. So just add, and then mesh, and then let's add a cube as to scale, and then let's run the scripts. And as you can see, the cube is deleted, and now we have the new scripts. So by using the info window and Python scripts, you can actually automate a lot of things in Blender, which is really useful. So I think I'm going to change the script a bit before we start adding materials and render the scene. So let's change the number to 1000, and let's increase the range on the X and Y axis to, let's say, -20 and 20, and then -2 and 2 for the Z axis. And then let's create a second save. So just click on the plus sign and then click Save as Blend File to create a new file. And then let's run the script. And as you can see, the previous monkeys are deleted automatically. And now it's finally time to get into the camera settings, the materials, and the render. So let's start off by decreasing the size of the script window, and then go to Add, and then add a camera. And then click numpad 0 to look through the camera, and then click N, and then lock camera to view. And while the camera is locked to view, you use the middle mouse wheel to move backwards, and then the middle mouse button to look around. So let's set it to like around here, and then you need to disable lock camera to view so that we can do other things in Blender. And then let's add a light source. So click add, and then go to light, and then add a sun, and then click G to grab the sun, and R to rotate the sun. And then let's go into the render settings and change to cycles because it looks a little bit better. And then if you have a GPU, make sure to use it. If not, just keep using the CPU. And when it comes to the amount of samples for the render and the viewport, I would set it to 150 to improve the render quality. And let's see what it looks like in rendered view so far. So as you can see, it's still quite dark and we don't have any materials for the monkey. But let's change the background color to be almost completely white, and then select one of the monkeys, right click to select, and then go into the materials, new material, and then let's change it from a principal material to a diffuse material, which is the standard for just adding a simple color. And let's add a blue color, and then we need to copy that material to the rest of the monkeys. So click A to select everything, and then we need to deselect the light and the camera. So holding shift and then double click on the sun, and then holding shift once again and double click on the camera to deselect it, and then holding shift and select the blue monkey, and then go up to objects, and then to make links, and then materials. And after a few seconds you can see that every monkey has the same material. And let's click nub at 0 to look through the camera. And let's also hide the overlay, which displays the origin points of the objects and so on. So if you want to move the camera even more, you can also lock the camera to view once again and move the camera. If not, you can just leave it at the same location and rotation. So I'm just going to move it around here. And now it's finally time to get into the render settings. So click render, and then change the display mode to the image editor. And then we're going to render the image. So click render, and then render image. And after a few minutes of rendering, you will have the finished image rendered. And if you want to save the image you just rendered, you can just go up to image, and then click save as, and then give the image a name, and then click enter to save. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and subscribe.